So, welcome everyone. Today's webinar is on how going green can be cost effective and save the environment. My name's Thomas, as I'm sure you can see on screen. I'm working the solutions team here at Synology. My job is to sort of help with any projects, a bit more technical, so we can help with sort of speccing out solutions for you. Basically, my job is to solve your problem and provide the solution with the Synology NAS. So that's mainly what I'm based for. But as we said, today's webinar is all about going green. So I think it's best to start with really what is going green. So maybe we hear it all the time on the news, maybe from the government in their pieces, maybe even our friends when we talk about sort of the weather, and it's often when it's hot and we're complaining and say, global warming, that sort of thing. Well, according to the Eco Hub, going green can be defined as environmentally friendly decisions to reduce, reuse, and recycle. So realistically, any effort we take to do those three, so reducing waste, reusing devices or materials, and recycling our waste or materials, is seen as a green thing. So we know what going green is, but what is green technology? I think it's maybe slightly different. So do we know what going green is? It's about focusing on the 3 R's that we mentioned: the reduce, the reuse, the recycle. But what about green technology? And I am going to use another quote here, and this one's according to Greenly. So Greenly have said that, in a nutshell, green technology is any technology designed to reduce the negative impact of human activity on the environment. So in essence, very similar to going green, as we would probably expect, but more in line with what we're using than what we are getting rid of. So now we sort of covered off what going green is on the sort of specifically green, and then more on the technology side. Let's see what we're going to sort of look at today. So we're going to be looking at 3 R's of our own, shall we say: recycle, reduce, and repair. Now we'll start by looking at how we'll start by looking at the materials and energy that we use. We will then look at how using a Synology NAS can help sort of reduce your energy use and provide the same performance. And then finally, we'll look at when things very occasionally go wrong and what is available to you to get them back on track. So we'll start with recycle, and I want to use one more quote, and I promise this is the last one of this webinar, so you don't have to keep seeing these quotes. But according to The Independent, by 2050, there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish in the sea. So that famous quote we use when we're talking to a friend maybe about his love life may have to change if we continue in this way. So can't always use there's more fish in the sea, because there'll be plastic at this point. So what we're doing to help with this, so from a Synology perspective, what we're doing to sort of help reduce this. Well, from the release of the DS218 and 218 Plus, that's all the start of using post-consumer recycled plastics, or PCR plastics for short, in our NAS products, and up to 27% of the plastic in your NAS has been recycled in this method. On sort of the other side of things, you may have seen things and images like this, where hundreds of trees are being cut down to be used for paper products. And what we're doing to sort of try and help prevent this is making sure that the packaging materials for the carton that your Synology product comes in is made from over 80% recycled paper. So that's sort of trying to help turn sort of views like this back into more things like this, which I'm sure we'd all love to see and love seeing. If you sort of walk up mountains and hike, I'm sure it's a view you're aware of and not one you'd want to change. So we've covered sort of what we use in our products, but what about what we waste ourselves? Well, we're a member of the European Recycling Platform. You go, great, but what does that mean? Well, this means that as a company, we are responsibly recycling our electronic waste and reducing the negative impact on the environment. And the sort of ERP, they strive sort of compliance for business to business and business to customer products, which we align with sort of perfectly. They work on packaging compliance for sales and transport packaging, which again sort of lines up perfectly. And then they sort of deal with battery compliance for portable, industrial, and automotive batteries. So less so in this part. We have batteries, of course, but it's not so targeted. But this is their sort of 3 points. So we covered how we responsibly dispose of our waste. Now I'd like to talk to you about the cloud. We have a cloud offering and service called C2. Now this uses 100% green energy, and I know what you're thinking right now. That's silly. There's no way that can happen. But the power supply of the data centers that we use guarantee that in regular use they use 100% green electricity. Now this means that only renewable energy resources are used, and if you don't believe me, as I didn't believe myself initially, we have a certificate which I'll bring up on screen shortly that shows this. Now it is in German, so if you speak German, that's brilliant. If not, it basically states what I said earlier about how regular use is 100% green electric. Now, the only thing I think that is left to talk about in terms of sort of our environmental impact is our carbon footprint. Now, it's not something that we have right now, but it is something we're working on. It's not quite finished just yet, but currently our team in HQ have found from what they've done that the data we do have puts us at a lower carbon footprint than other manufacturers in the same industry. So obviously moving things in the right direction. So we've covered off our materials that we use, the way we responsibly recycle our waste, the energy use of our cloud data centers, and briefly covered our carbon footprint. Now let's look at how using a Synology NAS can reduce energy usage and still provide you that great performance that you're after. So before I get onto anything too specific, I want to look at something everyone has in their house. I'd be amazed if you didn't, and that's an LED light bulb. More specifically, this Philips LED light bulb that you can get from John Lewis. There are other brands and retailers available. This bulb requires 5.5 watts and is considered quite a energy efficient option, getting an A+ rating. If we now look at the DS118, now the DS124 has of course come out now, but the numbers are practically identical, and I'm using this unit as it is up for grabs today. So this is why I mentioned the feedback form earlier. It's sort of checked out towards the end. So the DS118 requires 9.5 watts under load and only 4.22 while in hibernation, so while you're not using it. An average household will obviously have more than one light bulb in it, so it doesn't take long to work out that the NAS in question is going to be more energy efficient than the lighting in your home. Not something I think you really think about it turning a light on and off. So this NAS can just sit in the background and it will be more energy efficient than all the lights that sort of brighten up your home. But this can also then provide you with a place to automatically back up the photos to your phone, for example, by using something like Synology Photos. So it's quite an energy efficient option, and I don't think many people realize just quite how similar it is to running the lighting in your house, for example. So we now look at the requirements of a typical small medium business. For this, I'm going to use estate agents, and let's say they have 5 endpoints, and they're going to run 3 servers, and for those 3 servers, for specifically the CCTV one, they're going to need 3 cameras so they can monitor sort of the outside of the building. Now, all of these are connected into a switch, and in most scenarios, this probably will be the case, as there are very few file servers that can also do CCTV. So they will require a standalone solution, and the power consumption and cost of these units then can be quite high. So that's pretty standard. That's what we see pretty most places. But let's look at how, from a Synology's perspective, we can solve this for you by reducing that. And my option here is going to be the DS923 Plus. Now you can see the average consumption for power in Access is 35 watts or 35.5, and then hibernation is about 11.5. The heat output is maybe something most people don't think about. It's maybe not so much of an issue with these desktop units, maybe more when you look at sort of rack servers, and I'll explain that more in a second. But on Access, it's using about 121 British thermal units per hour, and then in hibernation, 39. So nothing overly hot. But to run our file server, we will use Synology Drive, where you can have up to 350 concurrent connections. So that's plenty for our 5 users. For Mail Plus, you can have up to 100 concurrent connections. Again, absolutely fine for our 5 users. Synology Chat, so replacing that chat server, again, up to 100 concurrent connections. So plenty for the 5. And there's a reason that there is all this built in. Obviously, if you're using all of the systems and services at the same time, then it's going to take it away from the others. So there's plenty of room in this to have all of it running on one place. And then lastly, we need CCTV. So they've got 3 cameras, 2 come free with the unit, or 2 licenses come free with the unit. We need is that extra £50 to cover that 3rd license. And this unit can take up to 40. So again, we're well within that threshold. Now, if we look at something that's probably more commonly used from sort of those sort of small medium business, they look straight to, should we say, your bigger companies, the Dells, the HPs, that sort of thing. I'm using this Dell PowerEdge T150 as my example. Now the specs are practically identical to the DS923 Plus, but you can see that its power consumption is much higher. That while access it's 146 watts, and in hibernation it's only 131 down. Like it's not a big enough decrease, I'd say. So we're already well up on the Synology NAS. And then its heat output under access is nearly 500 British thermal units per hour, and in hibernation, sort of 447 British thermal units per hour. Now, to give you some context on that, under access, that's nearly half of what a bathroom radiator would produce. So that's quite hot. And if you're talking then that it scales the same as it would with sort of in a server, and you're starting to get heat and heat and heat, you then got to pay for air conditioning and things like that on top of it. Whereas the Synology NAS units tend to keep their heat output quite low, so cooling is cheaper, and then you don't need so much air conditioning, and environmental and monetary costs are down. But to run the servers that they need, so for a file server and email chat server, they can use Windows Server 2012, which I believe you can pick up for about £150. And then I just sort of looked across multiple third-party CCTV software that you could install, and on average it was around £200, so that's the cost I used. And you can see the unit at the bottom there is 815. So if we then break this down, sort of more of a comparison between the two. So we have the 923 Plus and the Dell PowerEdge T150. The cost of the unit, 550 versus 815. I tried to find as comparable as I could, and this was the options. Licensing cost, so that's the £50 for our one surveillance license, so we can add that 3rd camera. And in this example, this is the 350, so that's for the Windows license and the CCTV software. So the total cost of the solution for Synology side is £600, and for the Dell and third-party licensing costs bring up to nearly 1,200. So we're looking at half. But that's not all we want to look at. So if I look at heat output and watt output, we'll add those costs in as well. So heat I've not included in this one because realistically, you don't need to cool either of them. They're desktop units. They'll be fine as they are. But we'll look at the watt output, and I've chose the max option so that it can be arguably as fair as possible. So if we then add in the energy costs for each year, this is basing it on the cost of per kilowatt hour being 30 pence, which I don't know how accurate that is, but that's what I found online. But if we base it purely on that cost alone, after 5 years using a Synology DS923 Plus, including the cost of the unit and the energy, you're looking at sort of just over £1,000 or £1,060. That's less than you're spending on the Dell PowerEdge T150 without even looking at using it. If you then account for the energy costs of the high wattage of the Dell unit, you're looking at over after 5 years of sort of £7,500. So there's a considerable difference. And this is why I say about saving title, basically answered here, as to both being cost effective and saving the environment with the Synology NAS. So we covered off how we can sort of reduce our energy consumption and cost using a Synology NAS. I now just want to talk about repair. And I don't think we can really talk about the topic of repair without talking about right to repair. And more specifically, I'm going to use the French prosecutors, where they launched an investigation into Apple after there was a court claim that accused the company of intentionally slowing down older iPhone models. The investigation mainly focused on part pairing, where users are required to get official repairs done, or they risk losing functionality or being told their phone is not a genuine iPhone, which is ridiculous. This is because it requires serial numbers. So the part being put into the phone that's repairing it has to then be matched serial number wise with the phone. This can only be done by Apple certified repairers, meaning you have to spend out. This is, of course, not the case here at Synology, and this is what we're going to go over now. So we have our store. We don't sell current NAS units direct to you, but we can offer you spare parts so that you can repair or upgrade your NAS by yourself. Now, if you're looking to find that, I'm now on the front page of the store, and currently it's at the bottom left as an option for you to click on. Apologies, I don't think that's playing. There we go. So yeah, currently it's on the bottom left. So the Synology store is there. If it's not in future, the way you find it is going about us under the sales section, and it's the second one down, and there's Synology store. Now there's plenty of things available. We have the B drive, there's routers, cameras, expansion units, even refurbished NAS, but we're going to look more specifically at accessories today because we're looking for our spare parts. This brings us down to the accessories, and you can see there's adding cards, memory modules, rail kits, and spare parts, and we're going to be looking at spare parts. I do apologize, it seems like it's skipping a little. So we're going to look for the DS923 Plus, that unit we mentioned earlier that will cover that sort of estate agents. You can see there's replacement fans, power supplies, even disk trays. There's not the most broad amount, but there are definitely options to repair. And then if we look at sort of more of an enterprise model, or one of our flagship ones, or more popular ones, the RS3621XS Plus, you can see there's lots of options available as to how to repair your system. So I think that's quite good. So there's options to repair. And if you sort of had any issues with repair and weren't sure how to do so, you can always request a teardown guide, as you can see on screen. And this will give you sort of step-by-step instructions on how to install new hardware. So nice, easy guide, easy way to look and repair. I'm sure you're all probably more than capable, but if you ever wanted just those little niche things that maybe aren't so obvious, the teardown guides will help with that. So now if repair is not possible and your NAS is within its warranty period, you can opt for a return merchandise authorization, or most commonly known as RMA. And this is where we take your device back, send you out a like-for-like replacement, and then fix up your unit ready for another RMA. You can, of course, extend your warranty with EW Plus, that this will need to be done within sort of the first 90 days of purchase. But this will allow you to go through RMA, and your replacement will then come back to you. Sort of extends it up to 5 years. And then once your replacement unit is fixed and it's certified working by us, it's either used for another RMA, as I mentioned, or it could end up on our store. So as I said, we don't sell current units, but we do have refurbished units. So on the few slides back, you would have seen that. I went through the sort of demo of the store. But we have our refurbished units, and currently there we have 8 units up. I'm sure there'll be more coming in the future, but this is a nice option. So maybe you don't have the budget for a DS923 Plus, but you can pick up the DS918 Plus, and it will have very similar options for you. And then, so maybe you decide, I'll go with that refurbished unit, but what about support? Well, as you can see on screen, a refurbished unit still has support up to 7 years in terms of DSM updates. So you'll still have those feature updates as well as security updates. Technical support may be limited, but it's still there, and they are still going to be able to help you. And of course, if you buy a new unit, you've got full support, full DSM, so everything is there. So you're covered if you need anything. So I'm afraid that is it. That is everything for today, but there's 3 things I want you to remember. So renewable materials and energy. So we use PCR plastics, recycled paper, as well as our data center running on 100% green energy, as I did prove with that certificate. I used high speed, low spark. That'd be nice and memorable. So it's utilizing an all-in-one solution, allowing you to get the same productivity, but for less power and cost. So we compared the Synology DS923 Plus with the Dell PowerEdge T150, and we worked out that it's quite cost efficient, and you also have everything in one place. And then lastly, we looked at the right to repair. So whether you want to repair your unit yourself or have done it with us through RMA, Nothing goes to waste. Anything we can't fix goes back to Taiwan and they reuse it there. If we fix it here, it goes up on the store or is used for RMA.